Well, thank you, Deputy Director Ray. I'll begin the questioning. If in the patent world there are many hurdles that a foreign country can raise to prevent a company from selling a product based on a lawfully granted patent, but in recent years we've seen countries like Brazil, Thailand, and India using the threat of a compulsory license as a negotiating strategy to those American companies to manufacture or license their products to local companies at government-mandated prices. Recently, India took the unprecedented step of issuing a compulsory license against a Bayer oncology drug, stating, among other reasons, that the patented drug was not being sufficiently worked in India because it was not locally manufactured. What steps did the administration take and should be doing now to ensure that countries think twice about using a compulsory license simply as a negotiating strategy or to facilitate their budget planning?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, on that particular issue, I can pretty much speak from the heart. As a pharmacist, as someone who's worked in both a drugstore and a hospital setting, I can tell you that pharmaceuticals are something that we all need and that there is a global need for those. Unfortunately, compulsory licenses dissuade pharmaceutical and biotech companies from innovating or from bringing their product into countries that grant compulsory licenses. In the case of India, I have to tell you, I was quite dismayed and surprised when they did indeed decide to grant that compulsory license for a reason that I think did not meet international standards and was not due to, for instance, a national crisis. What we do at the USPTO is we engage, we have somebody on the ground right now in India, in the embassy in Delhi, who constantly engages with all of the respective offices in India to discuss with them the importance of not granting a compulsory license in a situation where it is not warranted. Unfortunately, our education efforts on that issue to date have not yet been successful. I'm not sure if you were aware of it, but that compulsory license was granted by Commissioner Kurian on the very last day he left the Indian Patent Office as commissioner. So, unfortunately...
Was that granting appealed?
I'm sorry?
Was it appealed?
Yes, it's currently being ongoing discussed and appealed at this time legally. But we're also working with trying to continue our discussions with their equivalent of the USFDA and their regulatory authorities. We're engaging in as many discussions as we can with them outside of just the Indian Patent Office context. But we are doing everything we can to respect the rights of U.S. innovators. Unfortunately, from my perspective, I think that perhaps the loser in all of this will actually be the Indian people, the Indian patients, where major pharmaceutical companies will actually delay bringing pharmaceuticals into those countries.
Well, let me just say that I appreciate that concern, but here's the problem. Whenever you have a country that doesn't treat our pharmaceutical manufacturers fairly in the process, and they both issue compulsory licenses or threaten to do so, and have mandated prices, price controls, if you will, that's an untenable combination, because the fact of the matter is, if the company refuses to offer the drug in India, they simply acquire the drug, reverse engineer it, and compulsory license it to a local Indian company. How do we stop that?
I could tell you that reverse engineering some of these very sophisticated anti-cancer or chemotherapy drugs is actually exceedingly complex. If it was a small molecule or something that someone took orally, those can be more easily reverse engineered and identified. In terms of gearing up for the country of India to gear up and to make some of these very sophisticated biotech molecules, it takes really quite a long time.
But they've done it in this instance.
That's what I understand. But perhaps they started a bit earlier than I would have anticipated, but it takes a very long time for them to gear up and do that. From the USPTO perspective, education, IP awareness, teaming with them, constantly being there on the ground is perhaps the best weapon that we have, because we think that in the long term they do indeed want to be a good player in the international community. And so I think education and our efforts out front in trying to stop this in the future.
Let me ask you another question before my time expires. As opposed to criminal activity, these international patent and trade secret problems in the civil law space seem to be driven directly by foreign governments to benefit their domestic industries. And it seems like they've been getting a free pass as they devalue the patented innovations of American companies. If there was one thing that we could do immediately to help improve this global situation, what would it be?
I think get a little bit more on track with both procedurally and substantively with patent harmonization issues. As you know, because of your great efforts.
And I would think that making the compulsory license issue a part of those international intellectual property negotiations would be a critical part of that. In other words, I understand why countries want to have a compulsory license. If they have a life-saving drug and a company chooses not to sell it in a particular market, they're going to use their compulsory license. On the other hand, if they're going to make it unattractive to sell the drug in the market by forcing the company to manufacture it locally or by mandating price controls that are unfair, and unfair, by the way, to U.S. consumers who wind up subsidizing the cost of developing the drug at the same time that the country that compulsory licenses it gets to not only do that but also sell it at a lower price, again, unfair to U.S. consumers. So to me, this needs to be front and center, a priority issue. And it's not new to the current administration. This has been a problem for quite a while now. That needs to be injected into that process, and I hope very aggressively.
We do. I personally have engaged in discussions with various agencies of the Indian government on this issue, and it continues to be part of the ongoing effort within the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office with our External Affairs Division, which sort of oversee our IP attaches. So this is front and center, and we are consistent in our in trying to stop those efforts and in trying to stop the granting of further compulsory licenses.
Can a WTO case be brought on this dispute with India if the appeal does not succeed?
That is actually an appropriate question. Since I work with a different agency, based on my limited knowledge, I think that that would be one of the tools in our toolkit that perhaps should be considered.